and statisticians, keeping track of things such as wages, consumer prices, and jobs. Today, however, the Bureau reported dismal employment numbers for last month, as well as sharply downward revisions for May and June. And to be clear, bad news or good for whomever happens to be the president, there is nothing new about any of that, except what happened next. The President of the United States fired Ms. McEntarford, someone who was appointed by President Biden, but confirmed in the Senate by an overwhelming bipartisan majority, 86-8, with Senators J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio both voting yes. Yet today, after announcing the firing online, Trump said, quote, "Today's jobs numbers were rigged in order to make the Republicans and me look bad." He gave no evidence to support that claim, nor any to support the one he repeated later today when a reporter asked him about the potential impact of what he did.
On the monthly jobs report, going forward, why should anyone trust the numbers?
Well, that's a big thing. You're right. No, you're right. Why should anybody trust numbers? You go back to election day. Look what happened 2 or 3 days before with massive, wonderful job numbers, trying to get him elected or her elected, trying to get whoever the hell was running. Because you go back, and they came out with numbers that were very favorable to Kamala.
Yeah, fired everybody, stupid.
Trying to get him elected, trying to get her elected. And then on the 15th of November or thereabouts, they had an 800,000 or 900,000 overstatement reduction right after the election.
Not true. Keeping them honest, as our Daniel Dale was quick to point out, that simply did not happen. As you can see from the headline dated August 24th, those downward revisions the president mentioned were not withheld until after the election. They were delivered publicly long before it, and likely did not help Vice President Harris's campaign. But they were the facts, as best as the experts could determine at the time. The president, though, as you know, has a history dating back to his first term of going beyond just putting his own gloss or spin on inconvenient facts, which most politicians of all stripes do from time to time.
We're at a low mark. If we stop testing right now, we'd have very few cases, if any.
That was the president in 2020, arguing against trying to even accurately determine the size of the COVID outbreak because testing, and these are his own words at the time, quote, makes us look bad. And here he is the year before with a map he reportedly altered with a Sharpie himself to show Hurricane Dorian hitting a state the National Weather Service said was not likely to hit, but he tweeted that it would. You'll remember that a subsequent investigation concluded that top weather officials have been pressured by the administration to support the president's non-factual claim, none of which changed the facts then or now, nor, by the way, have the president's endless claims that he won the 2020 election changed the facts that he lost. Investors certainly understood the facts today, with stocks dipping sharply on that employment news, and had the president merely complained about it, there'd be little to see here. But shooting the messenger actually sends a message, and facts prove to be stubborn things. We begin tonight with CNN-Chief White House correspondent and anchor of The Source, Caitlin Collins. So, Caitlin, I wonder, did the president come to this decision today in the midst of seeing this bad news? Had he planned to go after the BLS prior?
So he gets briefed on these numbers the day before. And just to be clear, the commissioner doesn't single-handedly come up with these numbers. There are hundreds of people who work on this report. Then it's delivered to the commissioner that was fired today, who briefs the president's economic team, who then go and brief the president. He said that he asked who was delivering these numbers, basically, and obviously the minute that he found out that she was a Biden appointee, confirmed to this job. She's worked in government, to be clear, for about 2 decades, I believe. And that is ultimately what led to the firing here. And I think what's remarkable is seeing not just the president defend this, as he did as he left the White House today, but also some of his top economic advisors. People like Kevin Hassett were going out and saying that someone should be looking at this, that they wanted someone to make sure the numbers were accurate. Obviously, revisions are not new. When revisions would happen, actually under President Biden, you would also see President Trump complain and say that they were changing the numbers to prop him up then at the time. This just happens. These numbers certainly were worse. The revisions from the last 2 months were a pretty big shock today, and obviously raise questions about the state of the U.S. economy and if there are cracks in it and if they are because of the president's policies. But it is quite remarkable to see him taking this step today.
No question. And listen, by the way, he cheered numbers when the numbers were in his favor. He had no problem with the BLS when those numbers looked good.
Well, as Sean Spicer famously said in his first term, they were phony before when the president wasn't in office, but now that he was in office, they were very real now, was what he said at a press briefing.
100%. Now, as you know, I mean, the president has members of his administration, Scott Bessent among them, who come from the financial industry and know the value of accurate economic statistics to make business decisions, investment decisions, and of course, policy decisions. Is there any pushback from within his administration to doing this?
Not publicly that we've seen. There has been some when it comes to firing the Fed chair, for example, which has been another line of independence that people have said the president needs to respect. But we've seen people then advocate for doing that or justify the president's arguments for that. Even Kevin Hassett, again, in round one, he said that Trump should not fire the Fed chair, that there needed to be that independence. That has changed. And so I think pushing out the commissioner, because a report came out with numbers that the president didn't like, will raise questions if he's willing to do that in other areas and what that means. But I think underlying this, the numbers are still there. The Fed, you can still see what the Treasury bond market is. You can still see what the numbers are. And as you noted, as the stock market was closing today, they certainly saw through what the numbers actually were. And so there is a level of trust in what the government is putting out that is going to potentially be questioned here. But I think the numbers don't lie ultimately, and the stock market will be able to tell.
And listen, the people losing their jobs, they know they lost their jobs, right? No one can tell them that they didn't. Caitlin Collins, thanks so much.